Hey everybody, it's Ronan Dave, and I'm here with
Alexander. Nice to meet you.
So you're just going to use your real name?
Yeah, I don't have the
Don't
imagination.
want to do like a nickname?
Sparky McGill, no.
Anywho, I'm just kind of like doing a video to test out my new software, and I thought I'd do one about Japanese beer since I have consumed a lot of it over the years. And the beers that we're going to be looking at are the typical beers that you would encounter if you come to Japan. Though some of them now, of course, you can buy overseas, such as Asahi and I believe Sapporo. But these are the beers that you would come across in the convenience stores. Kombini is the Japanese word for convenience store. Kombini beers is a very popular thing to do. You've had many kombini beers.
Yeah, interesting thing about Tokyo. I'm not sure about Japan in general, but in Tokyo, like, there is a bit of a kind of a street beer culture that goes on, I think. You know,
and I say it's like we often say kombini beer or eki beer. Eki is the word for station, train station. And so a lot of people will go to kombini, get one of these beers or several of these beers, and then go and drink near the train station before catching their train, possibly their last train home.
Right. Another thing I've seen Japanese people do a lot is like if you have a long train journey and like a romance car and like a nice train journey, but often people like bring some beers and enjoy.
Well, we're here in where the hell are we actually?
We're in Itabashi.
Oh, Itabashi. Okay, I came diverse.
We're in my kitchen.
Okay, yes. Itabashi-ku, just a random samurai note, is where the grave of Kondo Isami is. He was the leader of the Shinsengumi. Shinsengumi were a paramilitary samurai force in Kyoto in the 1860s, early 1860s, just before these beers were brewed.
I'll take your word for it.
Yes.
I know nothing of this.
Yes. So yes, his grave is near Itabashi Station on the Saikyo line.
Right.
Yes. All right. So anyway, so as I said, so this video is just going to be, we're going to each drink a half of one of these beers. There's 10 beers here. We should be able to get through it. We've been in Japan a long time, so we've kind of become professional alcoholics. That's our idea. We're going to go halfsies on each one of these beers and talk a little bit about the history and just, our own experiences with Japanese beer. I think we will start with the Sapporo.
Hey.
The reason I'm starting with the Sapporo, now actually I will go into it a little bit later, but the reason I'm going with the Sapporo is supposedly this is the oldest beer.
Interesting.
In Japan. It was one of the first brewed in Japan by a German-trained brewer.
Right.
I was that's something to go into is like when beer came to Japan is open to debate because we know like maybe the Portuguese, Spanish might have brought some beer with them.
Right.
I don't know. They're not really big beer drinkers, especially back then, were they? But the Dutch were allowed to trade in Japan.
Right.
They were the only country allowed.
Right.
And they had a brewery, I believe, in Dajima, which is in Nagasaki. And so some Japanese might have tried their beer. That might have been first, but it didn't catch on.
Right.
There are also the English were in Japan for a short amount of time. William Adams was with a Dutch. William Adams, if you've ever seen the movie or TV miniseries Shogun or read the book James Clavell, the main character is based on a real person, William Adams. He was an English pilot. When I said pilot, I don't mean airplane. Back in those days, it meant the people that actually guided the ships. They had all the navigational charts and things like that.
Right.
He was the pilot of a Dutch ship that landed in Japan in 1600. And his arrival caused a lot of change and so on. And shortly after, a group, I believe, some British people followed sometime after to set up a trading company.
Right.
They might also have brought beer with them. But, as I said, it didn't catch on. It wasn't until really the 1870s that we started actually having commercial beer. By that time, Japan had opened up. And Sapporo, up in Hokkaido, was one of those places where some of the first beer was brewed. All right, so I'm going to do this Japanese style. I'm going to pour your glass.
Awesome.
Let's see if I can do this properly.
That's looking very good. There we go.
Okay.
That's not bad, is it?
Yeah, sorry, I kind of...
Where does the beer start?
Yeah, at the bottom.
You can see it's about halfway there. Jolly good. Okay, let's put that to a side.
So there's a lot of head on this beer. And in Britain, what is their feeling about head on beer?
Right, yeah, not a lot.
Yeah.
Not a lot is preferable. So.
This would get me thrown in the Tower of London.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if
it's an interesting one, that, because they've said, like when I've asked bartenders and things, they've said that customers prefer it. And I'm wondering how true that is, and if it is not just a way of like saving beer.
I think, like in Japan, part of it is from the marketing.
Yeah.
That big foamy head, just like is symbolic of success and good times, and so people want that.
Yeah.
But in Britain, you'd get punched for.
It wouldn't be good. Yeah. Well, like one of the things, and this is kind of interesting, is that it's about the Weights and the Weights and Measurements Act in the UK. So in the UK, they'll every glass will have like a measure here, and they'll say that much equals a pint of beer. So the amount of beer kind of has to go to that level.
Yeah.
They don't, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, I don't think they have an equivalent in Japan.
Oh, no.
It doesn't seem to be standardized. What is a glass of wine? What is a...
But also like the amount of head that they put on it. Yeah. It could be a bit of both. Like they're just over exuberant and also maybe trying to save beer.
Possibly, yeah. A mystery we'll never know. Cool. Shall we...
oh, yes.
Yeah, cool. Chin chin.
Oh, wait a minute. Yeah. Now, Sapporo, we've had this a lot.
Yeah, I've had this,
What's your opinion of Sapporo?
It's all right, isn't it? You know, I think there's... for me, there's not like a huge amount of difference between Asahi, Sapporo, and Kirin.
Yeah, that's true. I kind of... I do agree.
To some extent.
Now, as an American, I would say, like, before our craft beer days, you know, we had pretty crappy beer. So when I came to Japan, Sapporo, Kirin, and all that did me right. In fact, actually, I was drinking happoshu and thinking it good.
Oh goodness, could you explain what that is?
Yeah. Oh God.
We're going straight for the bottom.
Yeah. God.
Straight dive to the bottom.
It is alcoholic.
What can you say about it? It is alcohol.
Yeah.
It's the highest praise in the land. Yeah.
Now, to me, happoshu tastes of despair.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, similar thing with me when I was like, I moved over in 2008 when I was about like 22, 23 or something. And I was fine with it then. Like, I wouldn't touch it in my 30s. Do you know what I mean? Like,
God, no.
It has like what basically translates as industrial alcohol.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like a vat of pre-prepared alcohol which they pump into
beer,
something.
basically.
Yeah.
But what I hate is when you go to an izakaya, Japanese bar, for those that don't know, and they're advertising like nomi hodai, which is all you can drink, and then they bring you the beer, and you're like, you sons of bitches. It's happoshu.
It's in the small print, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's terrible. Now, I was going to mention, another interesting thing about Sapporo. Notice they have the red star here. This is to symbolize their support of Communist China. No. I think it's supposed to be the North Star.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Nowadays, if you get this is like an old version. Nowadays, when you get like a typical Sapporo, it's a gold star. I think they changed it because of...
Oh, interesting.
Because this logo was first chosen back in the, I believe, in the late 19th century.
When was like Hokkaido annexed?
That's a good, touchy question.
I mean, not fully, but when did that begin? When was like when did like Sapporo become like a place? And I wonder how how long after like Sapporo company was established. Yeah.
It was in the 1880s.
Right.
So, to kind of go back, when I was saying about the 1600s, with the Dutch and the English being here briefly, this is when Japan was still technically an open country.
Right.
And what happened? First, the Spanish and Portuguese came here in the mid 1500s, bringing guns and Christianity, which later caused some issues of some sort.
Can't see either now.
Then the Dutch and English came, but the Spanish and especially the Spanish were causing quite a bit of problem, and it led to Japan closing its doors. The period of just where the country was just shut off from all foreigners, especially the Spanish. And only the Dutch were allowed to trade, but they had to be confined to this small island in Nagasaki.
Ah, yes, that was it, wasn't it? Yeah. And you mentioned Anjin-san earlier. Yeah,
William Adams. Yeah.
My understanding.
Oh, but he was before the closing. He died actually before the closing.
Yeah, but my understanding is that his disruptive presence was a bit like, because the Jesuit priests were kind of saying, this is Europe and it's totally under the control of the Catholic Pope, and then here's this bloke who's going, no, not quite. Actually, there's Germany, there's
there's Protestantism.
Britain, there's this whole other thing, and it kind of sort of started to kind of the sort of Wizard of Oz curtain kind of started to come down on this. It wasn't quite a superpower, there's bits missing, which they were sort of discovered, which I think was kind of sowing some seeds. If I remember correctly. I read this a very long time ago, but
No, you're absolutely correct. And also, it meant the Spanish had a monopoly.
Right.
But with the Dutch and the English showing up, the certain powers were seeing, I can play them off, and I don't have to pay the Spanish prices.
I think there was a real, fear of Japan going the way of the Philippines, by which I mean kind of full on Spanish colonization.
Oh yeah,
but I don't know the history of Philippines.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that. There's a famous incident where a Spanish captain supposedly he was getting sick and tired of all the regulations they were having to jump through, and he said, "Why don't we just take over the country?" He said, "This is what we do. We get the Jesuits to come in."
Right.
He was acting like the Jesuits were like the scouts of the Spanish Empire.
Right.
They convert people over, and then we take over the country. But you think like the way the Aztecs were conquered, it was mainly the Spanish used so many native allies that often gets overlooked.
Oh, interesting.
It's not like 100, 200 Spanish just took over the entire Aztec Empire.
Yes, it's a fair point, isn't it?
Yeah, it was like they had something like thousands and thousands of native allies who hated the Aztecs. And so that was kind of what the Spanish captain in 1600 was referencing. Is why don't we just take over the country? And so word got back
it's what we do.
Word got back to the Japanese authorities, and they're like, what? We're not going to let that happen.
Wonderful. Well, I finished mine.
Oh, okay. Well, you're a Brit. I would expect you to.
Well, you've been doing a lot of the talking. Where would you like to go next?
Now, this one. Now, here we go. Spring Valley. Now, I mentioned about Sapporo being supposedly the oldest beer in Japan, but there is contention to that. Spring Valley, now this is actually a new beer, or a reintroduced beer. I believe it's considered a craft beer now. That's another, most of these beers that we're looking at today are the national beers. It's a very confusing history of the breweries, of how they formed both individually and then became conglomerates, and I don't know. I just like beer. I don't know how it's made, and I'm just keeping it down.
We're enthusiastic amateurs.
I forgot to mention about Hokkaido. So, Japan opens in starting 1853. The Americans show up. Commodore Perry with the black ships.
Perry-san, yeah.
And that begins the opening of Japan. And then the Meiji, what we call the Meiji period, after Emperor Meiji, that begins in 1868. That's when officially in 1867, the shogun, the last shogun, stepped down and surrendered his power to the emperor. And then we call the new era the Meiji era, and that's the whole opening, the modernization, and beer was a part of that modernization. They sent a lot of people out to get information because the reformers realized Japan was still in a feudalistic society. very behind the times. Before, like in the 1600s, it's rather interesting, 1500s to the early 1600s, the Spanish impressed them by showing up with guns.
Right.
Japanese copied those guns, and then were producing more guns, supposedly, than the Europeans.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's one of those factoids that's hard to prove. Okay, all right. But, so at that time, in the late 1500s, if the Spanish tried to take over the country themselves, it would not have gone easy, as it did with, say, the Aztecs, because by that time, the Japanese had plenty of firepower, and they knew how to use it.
I guess that's...
All right. Oh, yes.
Honoured guest.
I was going, well, what is he doing? I was like,
What could he possibly want?
Oh, that's the other thing. Is like somebody go ma ma ma.
Ma ma ma. Yeah.
I don't know.
That's pretty lovely. That's wonderful.
I don't know if it's because of the beer or we're getting better at pouring, but yeah, that's very nice.
You so happy redeemed yourself.
Kampai. All right.
Okay, so my first time trying this.
Oh, really?
Initial thoughts. Mm-hmm. I'm getting a taste of strawberries and childhood wonder. It's actually quite nice. It's a bit full flavoured. It's got an aftertaste. It's 6%. That's actually alright. Yeah.
Oh. No, I like this beer. I started drinking it more regularly.
Such a Japanese name, Spring Valley.
Oh, but that brings me to what I was saying about. Okay, so where was it? Oh, okay. So Japan opens up. Yeah. 1850 is the beginning process.
Right.
Part of Hokkaido, you were asking, was under dominion of the northern provinces, just a very small part. But once the Meiji period began, 1868, it suddenly became almost like, for Americans, you might think of like the Old West. That almost coincides with Japan's expansion into Hokkaido.
Oh, interesting. That's around the same time.
And with the same kind of terrible result, because you had a native population, the Ainu.
All right. Nobody talks about the Ainu.
Yeah, and that's why I said it's controversial. I don't want to go too much. Like, we just want to have a good time and drink beer.
I'm like, what a terrible empire.
Yeah.
As a Brit, I'm just going to completely stay out of it.
Not that we knew anything about that.
How awful. Who would do such a thing?
Oh, dear me.
Side note for the audience: his English accent would be considered an act of war.
So, a friend of ours has wrote a book quite some time ago called "The Twain Shall Meet," and Spring Valley Beer actually is related in this book. The author, by the way, is Russell Watson, whom I hope to be interviewing soon.
Yeah.
Yes, William Copeland.
William Copeland. The Dutch at Dejima introduced beer to Japan during the early 19th century on a very limited scale. It is generally considered that the first Japanese brewer was the student of Dutch learning, Rangaku, Komin Kawamoto, from 1810 to died in 1871, who began producing beer purely as an experiment in 1853. However, it has to be said that nobody had a clear idea of what real beer should taste like until William Copeland came to town. He founded the Spring Valley Brewery Company, the Spring Valley Brewery Company in 1870. Hoping to compete with both the imported and later locally brewed beers that were gaining popularity. His inspiration for his company name was the spring of gushing natural mineral water that Copeland discovered in the hills surrounding Yokohama. That same spring is now the site of a water fountain where children play.
Ah, see.
There we go.
Okay, that's good.
That's pretty nice.
Yeah. So this book, The Twain Shall Meet, is a lot about the foreigner influence, impact on Japan in many different various ways. And so that's why Copeland can be considered like the first person that officially introduced beer to Japan.
Okay, right.
Even though, like I said, he mentions about the Dutch, it didn't really catch on.
Right.
As I said, there probably was beer drinkers down in Nagasaki, but it was very few.
He seemed properly into it. Based on that. He was like, you, beer, now, let's make it happen.
But what happened is the Spring Valley eventually was bought out by the Kirin, which we'll be looking at eventually. But that's why, so it actually predates Sapporo by a couple of years.
Oh, okay.
But see, we could say Sapporo, though, would be the oldest Japanese beer.
If we're going Japanese.
Yes.
Yes.
Spring Valley was begun by, as I say, our friend William Copeland.
Stupid interjection.
Okay.
Spring Valley, is that not where Marty McFly lived in Back to the Future? So I was reading that history, I was like, how did
to you, the view at home thing?
That was Spring Valley, wasn't it? Spring Valley.
It could be, because Spring Valley is such a generic name in America. And like whenever they want to have like an idyllic neighborhood, Spring Valley.
I'm pretty sure it was.
It could be, yeah. All right.
Spring Valley Beer Company was started when Marty McFly accidentally...
Wait a minute, it all makes sense. Marty, we gotta go back. We gotta go back and start a beer brewery in Japan. Otherwise, the whole time...
Madness, Doc. So heavy, Doc.
Space-time will unravel on itself.
That's very good. You can do that. Awesome.
So let's go to the Asahi.
Right.
Now Asahi. Do you know what Asahi means?
It means morning light.
Yes, or morning sun, or morning light. Either one. That's the name. This is also an old brew from 1889, I believe. Osaka.
As your viewers are paying attention, it's the one I favour. It's my...
there's like Asahi cans all lining up. He has an entire wall of Asahi.
Cool.
Okay.
Wonderful.
All right. Let's get the Asahi going.
So yeah, for me, it's like I'm not, for beer, I'm quite a simple man. Actually, I'm quite kind of like finish work. I want a nice kind of crisp beer. So Asahi Super Dry, I'm sure it's awful for me. And lots of commentators will be like, "Oh my god, it's the worst."
Beer is bad? No.
Yeah, no, I'm really simple about beers. So this is an interesting pairing, and I wanted to talk to you about the. I wanted to talk to you about the craft thing because I want to say it was about 2012. I think when like the craft beer thing really sort of
started. Didn't the world end in 2012?
Did in that movie, didn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe it did through craft beer, but yeah, like, I remember like being quite into it, and then being like so done with it. After about 6 months,
I think it depends. Like me, I just like something that has a bit of a flavor to it.
Right.
Should we kampai again, or does it matter?
Yeah, why not?
Oh, okay,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, kampai.
Well, that's familiar, like an old pair of boots.
Oh yeah, I know. So,
Yeah.
Actually, I would put. I mean, not to. Oh, sorry, I need to stop hitting the table.
You really do.
Not to diss Asahi, but I would probably, in the Japanese national beers, I'd probably put it low.
Yeah, I don't think I could look somebody in the eye and go, "Oh, the greatest Japanese beer is Asahi." But it's like when I'm in a convenience store and I'm on my way home and I want a beer, I go, yeah, works tough sometimes. Yeah, like sometimes I just want something kind of like crisp and like nomiyasui. We would say, like easy to drink.
Yeah.
And like for me, that falls very much under that category.
Okay.
Like,
all right.
So I don't know. Yeah, like the craft beer thing is like I've got mixed feelings about it. I would say because we've
there's a lot of pretentiousness.
Oh goodness, yeah. They make it like as hoppy and strong as possible, and it's a sort of a fallacy that people have sort of moved into, where it's like just make it as strong as possible, wrap it up in some pop art, and like call it something like Bleep Rammer 5000, and in those pubs actually, like I generally find it's mostly Gaikokujin. It's not so even the staff.
Sorry, what was that?
Gaikokujin.
And what is that for the viewer at home that may not?
There's non-Japanese people.
Non-Japanese.
Yeah. Us lot.
You don't say Gaijin? I might have to beep that word because that's offensive to some people.
Some people do get annoyed about that. I think it's quite contextual.
But there are some people that like, or I should say some people, of course, foreign people, that get their knickers in a twist.
Yeah,
it is a controversial.
I don't quite understand, like, because you've got to kind of like look at how people are using it. Like a lot of my Japanese friends will be like, "Oh, I'll make a joke about me not understanding," and Gaijin Takarane.
Yeah,
and it's kind of it's all right, isn't it?
It's really bad when people try to say it's like the N word in America.
Oh goodness!
It's like no. It doesn't have the historical connotations. The whole. Oh my god! Just like,
oh my god!
It's like well, let's say we're drinking beer. We don't want to get too much into it, but like that has a much horrible.
It's not that
history.
It's definitely not that. I was in one of my like regular local pubs, and I was telling a story which involved me voicing a Japanese person calling me Gaijin. Basically, I can't remember what the bloody story was. It wasn't that interesting. And we did that, and then. There was a guy, another Gaijin, another white guy, who went to this very large Norwegian bloke, who actually I happened to know, but he didn't know we had a relationship, and said, we need to talk to that guy. The Norwegian guy thought, oh, we're going to have a nice conversation. The guy came over and he was like, how dare you use that word? So I've got this white guy in a Japanese pub telling me off for using Gaikokujin. He's like, we're going to take you outside. And I'm like, look at the Norwegian bloke who I know. And he was like, I don't know what this is. This is very awkward. I thought we were just going to go and talk to you. I don't know what this guy is talking about. And we just get looking at him being like, what, where's this outrage coming from? You know, like, I'm saying it, you know, like, and I'm saying it and I'm quoting someone else. It was...
Yeah,
you know,
like,
exactly. If you're Japanese,
even if you said Gaikokujin and was yelling it at you,
that's still be bad.
It's still the context, you know. It's just like
very alienating.
I'm glad you were polite as you were setting me on fire.
I'll
just say there is a job-seeking site called Gaijin Pot.
Yeah, and we regularly refer to our cards as Gaijin cards, don't we?
Yeah.
It's our word, man.
Man, how did we get on that subject?
Yeah, we went there.
Here's another bad story.
Do it.
I remember one American bloke, but he was talking about like being a foreigner in Japan, being treated kind of differently or gawked at or whatever. Or sometimes, having police maybe pull you over in your bicycle to check your registration, which has happened to me so many times.
Right.
There's certain times, like, some foreigners complain about the police, pulling them over, blah, blah, blah. And this American guy, like, in his mid-20s, here's this thing we say in the South, bless his heart.
we say that in the South of the UK as well. It was a bloke, bless his heart.
And he said, now I know what it feels like to be black.
Oh,
and I went,
like, no, you don't. No, you don't.
You don't have. Again, like,
I don't think it's work as hell to say no, you don't, sir. Like that's.
It's like it's one of those things. Like, yeah, of course I'm not black, but it's just like even I know what inconveniences I might encounter in this country is nothing compared to the historical, things that have happened.
I mean, first.
Tulsa, Oklahoma. No, sorry.
First point of call should be to talk to the black people who live in Japan.
Yes, exactly.
They're like, I know what it's like to be black in Japan. You don't know what it's like to,
I mean, but just saying in general, it's like no, you're not even close. It's just like
maybe like dipping his toe into the water by being minorly inconvenienced.
Well, I mean, as we say, I want to go too much into it because I can just I have an axe to grind. But like when people saying about the whole mask thing in America, say, "Oh my God, our freedoms and blah 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 blah," and trying to say this is oppression. It's like you have no clue what oppression is.
No, I'm with you on that. Yeah. I think it's there are like legitimate concerns in Japan. Like, for example, not being able to get housing because things like credit cards,
not being able to go to a soap lamp. That I've heard from friends. I wouldn't know anything about that. Anyway,
one too many.
But yeah, I mean, they're definitely like that one guy, Debito. Debito is this American guy who writes a lot of articles about, I guess, institutional I want to say racism, but really, I think with Japan, I fall back on xenophobia.
Yeah, he sort of writes editorials, doesn't he, on specifically on like regular discrimination practices. I think he's actually based in Hokkaido, is he not?
He used to be. I don't know what he's been up to lately, but you would often see in Japan Times, the English written newspaper that many foreigners would read. He would write about some aspect about Japanese discrimination policy. Yeah. He started in Hokkaido because he was not allowed into an onsen because he was foreign.
Right.
And I think it was actually where that particular one was, they were having trouble with Russians.
Right.
Breaking it up. And, Russians, come on. No, I'm kidding. I'm joking. To all you Russian viewers, do swidania.
What do I say? That's it.
But he does have like I say, he does have a point. I think he's a bit of a one-trick pony because it's always negative. Yeah, it's one of those things. Well, let's get into our next beer and I'll talk about it.
Okay, cool.
All right,